If you think you could never be vegan, you're in the right place. If you think there's something big you'd really like to do, but it's probably too late, you're in the right place. My name's Michelle Olander, and I think there has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. So I'm here every week to cheer you on and offer you actionable tips and strategies as you veg your best. Episode 142, The Plant-Powered Dog, with Diana Laverdure-Dunetz. Welcome, my Veg Your Besties. Welcome. I'm recording this introduction today, and we're getting ready to fly in a couple hours, 3-4 hours, to the UK, specifically to Edinburgh, where we'll spend a few days, and then a train ride to Lindisfarne, which is, if you are a medievalist, and there must be a few of you out there, right? Vegan medievalists. Lindisfarne was an important medieval monastic center and the site of one of the first recorded Viking raids on the British Isles in the 8th century, 1,230 years ago. Okay, I know. Your eyes are glazing over. So we'll have one night on the island of Lindisfarne where I hope to see puffins, seals, and early monastic ruins, and then a train down to London for a few nights where there'll be even more history and vegan food. History and veggies, that's how we roll. And if you follow us over on Instagram at Veg Your Best, VEDGE Your Best, if you're new, there'll be more details and photos and what we're eating. And anyway, it's very exciting for me that more and more people are following us over at Veg Your Best on Instagram. So today I have a guest interview, and I recorded this conversation with Diana Laverdure-Dunetz a few weeks ago, because it's a question I hear a lot, whether our dogs, our family dogs, can be healthy on a plant-based diet. So we have the woman who wrote the book on it, The Plant-Based Dog. Diana Laverdure-Dunetz has a master's in animal science. She's a vegan canine nutritionist. Did you even know you could be one? She's an award-winning dog health and science writer and a creator of the Plant-Powered Dog movement. Diana is also an enthusiastic and articulate advocate for dog owners who are wondering if caring for our companion animals obliges us to offer them meat, and whether it's possible for our pets to experience some of the benefits we have by eliminating the consumption of animal products. So I hope you're going to enjoy listening to Diana. I hope you'll visit her website, plantpowereddog.com, and I hope you'll take the evidence and the research that she shares there to your veterinarian, or you'll share her work with a dog lover in your family. Even if you are not a dog owner, I think you will enjoy Diana's passion, her story, and her infectious enthusiasm, and the way veganism transformed her career. So listen, and I'll see you on the other side. Diana Laverdure-Dunetz, author of The Plant-Powered Dog. Welcome to Veg Your Best.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm delighted that you took time from your schedule to be with us, because we love our animals. We love our animals. We love our pets. And for many of us, the love we have for a pet is what helps us become vegetarian, plant-based, vegan, whatever. Loving those eyes that look back at us, that is something that has been just inspirational for many of us. And so we need to know how to maybe can we be vegan? Can we be plant-powered with some of our pets? And you are the expert in the Plant-Powered Dog, your 2018 book. What year did your book come out?
The book just came out this past January. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
2022. No, 2.5. It's the latest science, 2.5 years in the making, and a lot of experience before that. But the book was just published this year.
Congratulations. Yeah. I don't know why I got that wrong. Brand new
No,
book.
that's okay.
Congratulations on so many levels then.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Diana, you've got a master's in animal science. You are an expert. You've been an animal nutritionist, a canine nutritionist,
Yes.
particularly. Let us know a little bit about what brought you to this brand new book.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would I have been writing a book like this? Would I be promoting and formulating plant-based dog diets? I probably would have laughed. For the pure reason that I bought into a lot of the myths that are out there that I think people are still buying into, and that might hold them back from further exploring the power of plants for their dogs. Um, so even though I have a Master of Science degree, I was vegetarian from 2009 to like 2017-ish when I started exploring the fact that I didn't want to eat any animal ingredients or use any animal ingredients. But I was still formulating meat-based dog diets because I thought that our little or big, whatever, but domestic dogs that sleep with us and cuddle with us, I still thought those were the wolves that everyone talked about. And wolves need meat. So I was actually going to walk away from my business in 2018 when I became vegan because I thought there was a discord in my values about not harming any animal, but my values of never wanting to harm a dog. And that's when my husband said, do your own research. It sounds so simple, but even though I was in the business, I was buying into and following a lot of these same people that dog guardians follow that are just in this same box. Species appropriate diet, dogs are wolves. So I did my own research. I spent a year sending videographers around the world to talk to some of the foremost veterinarians who had changed their mindsets and their practices, and the scientists. And I came, Michelle, to just the most amazing epiphany that not only can dogs live and thrive on nutritionally sound plant-based diets, but these heavily meat-based diets that became popular a few decades ago might actually be contributing to a lot of the skyrocketing chronic diseases that we're seeing in dogs now. So in 2018, I switched my practice over and I thought, no one's going to call a plant-based dog nutritionist, right? Whatever.
That's a little bit
And
niche, huh?
it's a little bit niche. Yes, that's a little bit. It's a niche of about one really in the world, you know. But you know what? I am so excited to tell you that I've been busier than I was when I was doing meat-based diets. And it's so gratifying because some of the people who I did meat-based diets for are like, wow, I'm so happy you're doing this now, and have come back to me for plant-based diets. So now we've got a track record of, several years of it. I've dealt with every kind of condition, basically, that, chronic illness, kidney disease, diabetes, gastrointestinal issues, cancers, and we have wonderful results. And I thought, you know what, I have to get the word out there more. And that's where the book came from. I thought people need to know the science behind this, right? They need to know the facts. And that's hence the book. Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of facts. I looked at the book. I don't know. I guess my dad taught me this at some point, but he said always thumb to the back of the book and see what the bibliography or the citations are. You have 60 pages, at least 60 pages, maybe a couple more, of citations of scientific literature that you are gleaning
Yes.
your information from, and you are so this is not just you as a vegan or as a advocate for
Right.
animals saying this is what I think.
And that's really important for me to have people understand, because like I said, if things had turned out differently and the evidence was against it, I would have walked away, Michelle.
Mm.
I mean, I love doing what I do, but I can, not do it and have a wonderful life. I wasn't going to do it if I had to continue to use animal products to harm animals. And I wasn't going to do it if it was going to compromise the dogs that are entrusted to me nutritionally. So, yay, right? It just came out perfect. And I wanted people to be able to turn to these studies themselves. And, a lot of the studies, back in 2015, I think it was, my last book is called Canine Nutrigenomics, The New Science of Feeding Your Dog for Optimum Health. And it is not plant-based. I've evolved since then, like we all do. We learn more. But what it introduced, nutrigenomics, is the science of nutrition and how it affects our genomes, all the cells in our body. And what that book introduced, and this book is an extension of, is the deep similarities genomically between dogs and humans. So we have evolved together, literally, cellularly for tens of thousands of years, our microbiomes. So I do sometimes laugh when people go back to the same old teeth, their teeth. Let's look deeper than teeth. Let's look to how nutrition is affecting their cells and creating chronic diseases. 6 million new cases of canine cancer a year. Those are just the ones that are diagnosed in the US alone. There are studies. There was a really interesting study done out of Spain, an obese area of Spain, where they studied the people and the dogs in the household. And I believe it was 100% of the dogs were also obese when the people were obese. But not only that, the dogs suffered, a great percentage of the dogs also suffered from the same lifestyle-related chronic diseases that the people were suffering from: high triglyceride levels, diabetes, metabolic disease. So we're taking our dogs down a very unfortunate lifestyle path. Something's not working. So for me, what I found is plants. How can we, it's not working, right? So like we're learning with people, how can we fix things? Well, a whole food plant-based diet. And I'm discovering these same benefits with dogs.
So this is very interesting because I think we need to remind ourselves that our dog in our home or in our yard is not just a friendly wolf. It's not just a friendly wild dog.
Yeah, that's such, I think you hit on, I know you hit on the key. Because, and there's a lot of marketing out there to convince us that they are a friendly wolf or a wild dog. And I get this all the time on Facebook. As you can imagine, dogs are wolves, dogs are wolves. And, I have to admit, sometimes I get a bit irreverent in the response when you try to tell them to look at the science. I said, well, if your dog is indeed a wolf, why are you forcing him to live in your house? Why are you forcing him to ride in a car? He should be out there with his wolf brethren, hunting in the wild. Get back to me and let me know how that goes. Right? I don't know about, the dogs in your life. It's not going to go very well for my guy. And I think we've readily accepted that our dogs are nothing behaviorally like wolves. And how has that happened? It's happened over evolution, right? But for some reason, we're still not wanting to accept that they have evolved in other ways.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And they're not cats. I mean, most of us,
no.
The wisdom we have about cats is that they are obligate carnivores. They do
Correct.
require it. Okay.
Correct. And that's why I'm not a cat nutritionist. It's called plant-powered dog.
Yes.
I'll leave it to others to, there are nutritionally formulated vegan cat diets out there. I think honestly, and again, I'm not an expert on cats. I think maybe the future for cat food might be more the cell-based meat type things. I don't know. But dogs are omnivores.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the cultured, yes. But dogs are omnivores like we are. And I want to touch on the point because someone could at this point step in and legitimately say dogs are classified taxonomically as carnivores. Hmm. But so are other animals that are like panda bears that have actually evolved to be vegan, right? So actually some herbivores, nutritional herbivores, are classified taxonomically as carnivores. And so I think it's important to understand that taxonomy, and I think it was Linnaeus, his name, who kind of classified most plants and animals. This was hundreds of years ago. So how did we do it? If you and I looked alike, lived in similar areas, maybe ate the same back then, we were classified the same. But what we didn't have back then was DNA. And what we didn't really recognize is that organisms aren't stagnant. Organisms evolve through time. And I think that's what we're looking at now.
That's fascinating because dogs have literally, domesticated dogs have literally evolved with us for centuries. Maybe
for tens of thousands of years. Yes. Yes.
That is, I mean, I think that is a grip because that is the first thing I think people say is, but you wouldn't feed a wolf,
right.
beet greens.
Right. Exactly. And, we have to always say it has to be nutritionally sound. But any diet has to be nutritionally sound. There are people out there that create unbalanced raw meat diets. You can't just throw hunks of raw meat at your dog either. So there are studies that show that can be really unbalanced. So we're only talking about properly balanced diets, regardless of what type they are.
So important because that's the same thing with human beings. You can definitely have a terrible diet that's vegan. You can definitely have a terrible diet that's not vegan. Of course. I mean, it's so important that we make our distinctions based on thoughtful distinctions, not on just knee-jerk reactions. So as a canine nutritionist, when you are say you've got a client who comes to you and say, I'm worried about my dog for whatever reason. What are the classic reasons, in fact, that people come to you and they're worried about their dog's nutrition?
Yeah, usually by the time they come to me, not always. More and more people are doing this preemptively and preventatively, but most of the time they've already got a chronic illness. One of the, a couple of the top ones are chronic kidney disease, gastrointestinal issues like IBD, cancer. I do see a lot of cancer, and I'm seeing more diabetes, interestingly, in the last couple of years. So usually there is some, and then I go back to, okay, this is also what made me start thinking years ago, what is the root cause of these types of diseases? Inflammation in the body, chronic inflammation. And animal ingredients create chronic inflammation. It's interesting. Again, I've had people say, well, that's in people. There are studies out there that we don't necessarily see become mainstream and that I even stumbled upon almost accidentally during my research. One study, and it's a small study, but it's really thought-provoking, is that dogs, let me step back. There is a chemical that omnivores express in their hair. So meat-eating people express a certain byproduct of metabolizing meat that is linked to cancer. So guess what? They studied dogs who were eating meat-based commercial diets, and in their fur, they expressed this same compound. It's you can imagine the length of the name of the compound. I probably can't pronounce it, but they express the same cancer-linked compound. And one of the concerns that the study authors brought up, whereas you and I, well, you have more hair than I do, but whereas humans have less hair all over their bodies, right? Dogs have it all over. So what are the ramifications for expressing cancer-causing compounds in their hair? So what I try to point out in the book is that cancer, which we're all worried about, cancer is very concerning in dogs. And cancer in people and dogs is so similar that they do what we call comparative oncology, meaning that they study one species and do clinical trials even on one species to benefit the other. And there are these clinical trials and set up. And so this is because the cancer processes in humans and dogs are so similar. So again, let's go back, 6 million new cases a year, Michelle, of canine cancer in the US alone.
Mm.
I think we need to look beyond molars. We're not designed to rip meat, right? Look at our teeth, but look at all the people that are self-described carnivores.
Mm.
So we need to look beyond that and go deeper into the cells.
So when people do come to you and they say, listen, my dog maybe has been diagnosed with this kind of chronic type of illness, I feel like we need to clean up his diet, her diet. Where do you begin? Do you analyze the dog? Are dog breeds very different in terms of their needs, or is it mostly body weight? Like, where do you begin assessing their diet?
I begin by sending the client a really detailed health and nutrition and lifestyle questionnaire, so I can get a complete background. And where there are certain, yes, breed-related conditions and considerations of small versus large dogs. For example, German Shepherds have very, very delicate gastrointestinal systems. So there are definite breed-related considerations. But what I try to get a handle on is something that I find very interesting, and we're finding out now at the root of a lot of disease, what's going on in their gut. So I focus a lot on the microbiome of the animal to the extent that I can. We don't have the testing still in dogs that we have in people, but there are some tests out there, and you can glean some things by listening and exploring answers to the questions you ask. So I start with trying to work on the microbiome, work on decreasing inflammation, and that's across all breeds and types of dogs.
And so does that, and so with, do you find some of your clients, the clients are actually, well, your patients, and then you have your clients,
not patients, because I'm not a vet.
You're not a vet,
but clients,
and
just like a human nutritionist.
But the owner of the clients, do you find much? I'm guessing there must be somebody in the family when you make a recommendation that goes, "That's crazy. Dogs need meat." Do you have to do like mediation in families?
No, I don't do that. Leave that to them. That's their problem, right? Where they do get the most pushback, usually by the time someone comes to me, there's like family agreement within, like, say, the household. They might have relatives or friends, and quite frankly, and I put this advice in the book, I don't feel the need for people to defend themselves from the judgment of people who don't have the facts. Unless this person is directly involved in your dog's care or their life, don't tell them, quite honestly, if they're going to be judgmental, unless you have to, right? It can be the judgment and the bullying, and I've seen it online, can be very powerful. The one instance where that does become a conundrum is when it's the veterinarian, because you want to have a good veterinary partner, right? I mean, nutrition is a big part of the overall health plan of your dog. You don't really want to have to hide their nutrition from your vet. And sadly, a lot of clients come to me and they are doing that because their vet is judging them. Why is the vet judging them? I love vets. They have to do everything, right? I mean, in human medicine, you have your dermatologist, your surgeon, your eye doc, whatever. They are doing everything. So they really don't have time to read books like mine. I hope they do. I want it to be taught more in veterinary schools. They're not getting the nutritional, education. And so they're learning it from the bigger pet food companies.
I think that's very interesting. I don't want anybody to think that this is just a manifesto. It's not your manifesto. This is actually a scholarly, it is a scientific
Yes.
book.
It's a scientific book.
Yeah.
And with a master's degree, I could actually teach. So it isn't written by somebody who just had a good experience with their own dog, which unfortunately is out there online. And I really caution people against that. Let's, look at who you're working with to partner with your dog's health. And I think that's also very important when we're talking about, I will talk to veterinarians on behalf of my clients and answer any questions that they have from a scientific perspective. So for me, science is paramount. And I just keep coming back that if it had led me in a different direction, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now. I'd be off maybe, having a little cocktail somewhere, enjoying myself.
I think that's
You
such an
know,
important distinction. Yeah, I love that you said that, because you said if the science had said to you, no, raw meat necessary for all dogs, regardless,
right.
has to be part of their diet, you would have said that's what your dog should be fed, and I'm not doing this work.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my veterinary mentors actually is Dr. Richard Pitcairn, who a lot of people know. He has been around for 50 years and was originally, his book is in its fourth edition. I actually recently interviewed him and will be posting it. And we had a really scientific discussion. And it's that same science that made him, over decades of his veterinary practice, ask the logical question: what is going on here and in his case, with his patients? What is going on? And his fourth edition of his book, which I think came out in 2017, did a 180, both for his own ethical reasons and again for the health reasons of the animal. So he happily married that long before I did, from a veterinary perspective. And he's a hero, because stepping out in that way as a veterinarian is really stepping away from the pack, if you will. Yeah.
And it always surprises me that there aren't more vegetarian and vegan veterinarians. That's a topic for another day, probably. But I just think you spend so much time holding, helping, caring for them. There's got to be some cognitive dissonance there.
Isn't that interesting? And we've talked about that. I actually wrote a blog post a couple of years ago that PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, posted, which was, why aren't all veterinarians vegan? And, just like medical doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, veterinarians take a similar oath to protect all animals. It's not to protect dogs and cats and horses and ones that we, call familial type animals. It's to protect all animals. So, he actually said to me once, Dr. Pitcairn, someone asked him at a conference when he asked for a vegan entree. Oh, you don't, eat meat. He said, I don't eat my patients. And
yeah.
And I wish it's really one of my deepest wishes that all veterinarians would be a little bit more introspective on that topic.
Yeah. And I think, as anyone who like myself, I was not vegan, I was not vegetarian until my 50s. There is a true, like, veil over the eyes, a veil over the thought process that this is just natural, normal, and necessary, and we just don't deal with it emotionally.
You're right. And that's why, too, with the book, there are a lot of, as you know, I mean, there are tons of great documentaries out there. There's enough out there to show us from an ethical perspective why we don't want to be, consuming animal products. I didn't want to be that. I in the resources, I lead people to those, to those other resources, because there are some wonderful ones out there. but it's funny. What I found was you can watch all of that, and if you still believe that your dog needs meat, you're going to feed your dog meat.
Right.
And I wanted to show them that they don't. And almost across the board, when someone comes to me, feeding their dog meat is the last vestige of harming animals, of touching that. And they'll say, "Oh my God, I'm so happy. I hated that. I hated touching that." And it's like setting them free. And I can relate because it set me free when I realized it.
Now, as you know, the name of this podcast is Veg Your Best, and it's because I do believe that there are really good reasons to go vegan or vegetarian or whatever your route is overnight. But lots of people can't do it overnight. It's an evolution. It's a bunch of skills and strategies and mindset that they have to learn and adopt before. Do you do a similar thing when you recommend your plant-powered diets for animals? Do you sometimes let people move in installments, or are they typically in a situation health-wise where the dog needs to have a pretty big overhaul right away?
They're typically, unfortunately, in a health situation where we need to get them on a new diet, but that's a really great question from a physiological standpoint too, not just, our dogs eat what we give them, right? So if you changed it overnight and assuming they like it, they'll eat it. However, that's not the best strategy physically for them because especially if they're a meat-eating dog, their microbiome isn't used to, right, digesting that plant matter, fermenting it, right? Although like the little species are different. So I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, I tried and he got gas and he got diarrhea." Yeah, I'm not surprised because we have to give the gut time to adjust. So when we're switching over from a meat-based to a plant-based diet, we transition slowly to give the gut time to adjust. Yeah.
Super important. And that's just as true for human beings.
Yeah.
Just as true.
Yeah.
And that so many people say, "No, I ate all beans all weekend and I'm miserable, so I guess I can't go."
Right.
Like, no.
Yeah. I see that on Facebook. Oh my goodness. I gave my dog a head of cauliflower, broccoli, and he's got oh, really? If you ate one, how would you feel?
It's funny how if we have those thoughts, those beliefs really die hard, don't they? That this is what's normal. Even if we're getting really bad results from normal, they just still seem normal.
Wow. You're hitting on so many topics and points that I see reflected in people over and over again, especially on social media. And I think even when it comes to humans, right? If you say, it's not, don't eat meat, you're harming animals, you're really telling them that grandma's pot roast, you're right. Like your grandma's a horrible person. I mean, she would never harm anybody. And I think so, even on the human level, it's very difficult for people to internalize the message without doing a lot of introspection that might, like you said, that veil would have to come up. And it's even easier when it comes to their dogs because the marketing messages have been so strong for so long that you can just look away. You can just say they need this.
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder with people to say it, but with animals, you can still say it.
Well, I think that's an important distinction, is to remember that it takes time. It took time for us to believe certain things. It took time. And we,
yeah.
What is it? First in, last out. It's like those things that we've really held on to for years and years. They're hard to let go of. The new stuff we can get rid of much faster. So, I have one grand dog that has had it. She's a pit mix. And you are not a veterinarian and you do not know this dog. So she just said, "But my vet says she has to have collagen. Is there anything plant-based that is available to help with her knee?" I think it's her knees. She's had 2 big operations. So are there
Mm,
sometimes things that you just like in medication, human beings sometimes have to take a medication that is not plant-based.
right. Well, collagen is not a medication to my knowledge. I don't know if she's taking a prescription. There are absolutely plant-based alternatives for, you're saying she has arthritis, is that correct?
I think she has it was an injury that
Or
happened in
joint?
two joints. So
Mm-hmm,
she's a young dog. I don't think it was arthritis, but I
mm-hmm.
actually don't know. I'm putting you on the spot
Yeah.
just because she said,
No,
but
I mean,
but collagen, I have to have that, right?
well, yeah, I'm not gonna, I will never contradict a vet.
Of
What I
course.
always tell people is, if I were you, I would ask my vet such and such, right? That's how I love to put it. If I were her, I would ask my vet, what is the science behind giving my dog collagen for this particular um, injury or condition? And are there other alternatives? I will tell you right now that there are anti-inflammatory joint alternatives that are not animal based. So the answer is, it's absolutely out there. I've yet to not find a plant-based alternative to just about anything I was looking for. Now, like you say, there are prescription medications out there. That's not necessarily the case, right? And I'm not a veterinarian, so it's not my role to find people alternatives to prescription medications. But when it comes to anti-inflammatory type supplements, and things like that, I've always found what I call kinder alternatives.
Well, that's such a
Yeah.
good, I mean, that is the kind of thing, the kind of skill we all need to develop when we're on this journey or we're changing the way we're living, is how to ask for the science. Is there science? Is it just something we've repeated for 35,000 years? Or is it something that no, actually, there is a, blind study that we have experimented with animals with these
Right.
two different processes.
Well, I mean, that's just it. And we all know that our bodies have collagen, and collagen is important. And there is the um, belief that ingesting an animal's collagen will therefore help our collagen. I would ask, is that really true?
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
And he might provide science to back that up.
So very
But
good
if
to ask.
not, yes, it's always good to ask. It never, you know, just as when we go to our doctors, I think a lot of people are afraid to question both their own doctor and their veterinarian. And that's why, I make it again, I just make it just like a human nutritionist would work with their client based on the medical diagnosis. It's not their job to diagnose a patient, right? I would hope they work off of their in tandem with a doctor. Um, I work off medical diagnoses. It's not my job to diagnose a dog with kidney disease, but it is my job to look at the lab work and what the veterinarian has diagnosed. But I can tell you that sometimes I see things and I put it, if I were you, I would ask my veterinarian this, and it never hurts to ask.
That's so great. And I
Yeah.
think, and sometimes I think we do need support as people, whenever, even in just in our families, we have questions and we have all kinds of drama going in our head. I guess we can't say that. I'm probably an idiot for asking. This is not,
Right,
I don't really have any business questioning this person, but just having someone
right.
standing outside of us going, well, why don't you ask that question? That we all really need some support like that.
Yeah, and we should not be afraid to ask our medical doctors, right? If you were intimidated by your medical doctor, I wouldn't want to go to them. And I'm extremely lucky. I have had the same veterinarian that I've worked with since 2002. He's a wonderful human being. He himself is vegan, but was not always throughout our working relationship. He has evolved as well throughout that time, like I would hope we all evolve. Um, but there are times when people need to ask themselves, is this the right veterinary partner for me?
Mhm.
if your veterinarian is intimidating you, I've literally had clients come to me and cry because their veterinarian tells them they will kill their dog with a plant-based diet. I would say, really, is that the wrong, is that the right partnership for you?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very important distinction, to be thinking about how we can partner with our personal medical and scientific
Right.
people as well as our animals. And I mean, most of us don't think clearly when we've got a sick dog, right? I know I
No.
never did. I haven't had, my first child was a dog, as many people I know. And I could still start sobbing just thinking about Louis.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So tell me quickly about your dog, because you had a rescue or you have a rescue?
Both.
Both.
Um, yeah, my first rescue, Chase, who came to me, he rescued me January 6th of 2002, started this whole journey. And you brought up a really great point, which is how looking into their eyes and seeing a little bit into their soul expands you towards all animals. I find, unfortunately, that that hasn't happened with a lot of people. They will do anything for their dog, but they don't broaden that. And maybe because they haven't had the opportunities to interact with cows and pigs and things and really see how similar they are, right? But Chase was an abandoned, neglected animal. And as I became more invested and connected with him, it just broadened me towards all abused and abandoned and neglected animals. And that's really how it started. He changed my entire life. And I didn't know back then that it was going to lead to this. I really didn't know that. But when you look back now, you can almost just see the logical progression. Our Chase died on June 30th of 2018. He was probably about 18. I had him for 16 and a half years. He went through every incarnation with me of diet, because back then I was not vegan. So towards the end, he started to be more vegetarian. And then we adopted Moo, from Vietnam, September 16th of 2019. And he is our plant-based pup, and has been since he came to us. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Now,
Yeah.
what's the story there? How do you have a dog that was adopted from Vietnam?
I used to belong to a list for many years, called Cuddly. And I recently took a break from it because I get so many horrific stories about animals. Um, just, there were 10, 15 a day, and you donate money. I was ready to go broke, quite honestly. So we took a little vacation. But Moo came in as one of these stories, and his picture was horrific. He was tied up in a gutter. He was just
Mm.
puppy. And it makes me want to cry. I wish I could show the before and afters right now. He had mange so bad that he couldn't open his eyes. He had been left to just bake in the sun, no water, no food, tied up. And long story short, it just became clear to me, and there's a lot of kind of freaky signs that this Moo was saying, that Chase was saying this was the one. And I reached out. I thought they were somewhere in the United States, to be honest. When I first reached out, I thought, oh, and they were in Vietnam. The rescue was a small rescue in Da Nang, Vietnam. And anyway, I said, do you ever get dogs to the United States? And they said, yeah. They said, we try to find like a volunteer who's going somewhere in the US and put the dog on the same flight. Once the dog gets to the US, you've got to find a way to get him to you. So a few months went by. They had to rehabilitate him anyway, but we were getting into September. I didn't want to do it during the heat anyway. So once we were getting, out of more, towards the end of September, it became clear that the right volunteer, I didn't want to wait any longer, because if someone had asked to take him over there, they would have said yes. So I connected with a vet in Ho Chi Minh City, right, Saigon, and we worked. And through Lufthansa, he first flew to Da Nang, brought Moo to his clinic where he gave him all of the necessary vaccinations and paperwork, and kept him there for a week like you have to do. Then I hired a broker in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We flew him Lufthansa. I understand if you have to fly an animal, Lufthansa is the way to go. They are fabulous, and they were. They have a state-of-the-art facility that they built in Frankfurt. He stayed overnight there. I guess they get out and they play. And then he was met by our customs broker in Miami, and he cleared him and brought him to our house. And I'll tell you, Michelle, from the minute he got into the house, from that, I was a nervous wreck for 2.5 days. As soon as he got into the house, he knew he was home. And wow. I know that was sort of a long story, longer than I should learn how to shorten that story.
Well, it's kind of a mind blower, isn't it? This poor abandoned animal, half a world away, gets the benefit of all these resources.
Yeah.
And is now in
Talk
your
about
home.
Being under a lucky star, right? Yeah. And us too, equally us too. He is our, how you get. He's really our child. Yeah.
And what an illustration of, I think one point of view would be, okay, what sense does that make with all the millions of animals that are suffering or ill-treated?
Yeah,
on the other hand, you might say, well, what an illustration of what a human being can do to alleviate some suffering. And so maybe that's kind of the extreme end of alleviating suffering, but we could all do a little bit.
Yeah, and I can only say to that I certainly never sought out getting a dog from Vietnam. Right? I had called local, rescues, and this would be a whole other discussion. It just became so clear that we were meant to have this dog. And that he just found us against such amazingly, great odds.
Amazing odds.
Really amazing odds. Yeah. So it wasn't like I sought out and said, I will, I need to get, what dogs do you have available in Vietnam? I didn't even know he was in Vietnam when I first, but once it all played out, he had to be ours and we had to be his.
What a story. No, what a story. And you feel like Chase was part of bringing him to you.
One of the most amazing, yes, there are just these really bizarre jokes we used to have when we had Chase, that there was actually a Vietnam related joke that we had with Chase. It's a very long story, and when I saw Moo, they named him, I just thought that was so cute. When I saw him, you would not know what he was going to look like. There was no clue. It was horrible. Well, I will tell you that I see pictures of Chase and pictures of Moo, and I now can't tell them apart.
Oh, wow.
But Chase was about, Moo was about 30 pounds. Chase was about 55 pounds. But he ended up looking just like a smaller version of him. In a million years, I didn't expect that. No.
Well, I do think what you bring up with this list, cuddle, is something that I don't know anything about cuddle, so I'm not
cuddly. I think they used to be called pound wishes. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know anything about them, but I do know that many people, I think, protect themselves from going down the route of being vegan, vegetarian, plant-based, because they think if I have to think about that, if I have to look at those videos and picture, I just cannot go there. And so they would rather kind of keep that veil down, because to really think about how animals are treated in the industrial animal sector, or in just even down the street with people who don't have resources. It is just too much.
It is. And I think one thing that is interesting about the scenario with Moo is that this organization that I was on their email list, and I is predominantly, while you did occasionally get a farm animal rescue, it's predominantly a dog and cat is predominantly the types of emails that would go out in the rescues, the small rescues that would send them. And, anyone who knows anything about Asia and Vietnam and some of these areas, and one of the reasons that I felt we really also had to get Moo out of there was that they look upon dogs like a lot of people in our culture look upon food animals. Mm-hmm. And so you can really ask yourself, and I wish people would ask themselves when they're looking at their dog. It's horrific to think this, but in other cultures, they look at your dog no differently than you look at that cow or that pig. We want them to change. We work hard. There are organizations that work hard to get that to change. And God, I hope that changes. But I hope that we can internalize that to help us change too towards other animals.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think standing in judgment of another culture's choices about food animals is not the correct order of operations.
We should change ourselves first. My husband practices functional medicine, and his degree he has a doctorate of Oriental medicine. Well, when he went to school, a lot of the formulas, unfortunately, contained like dog ingredients, and he once brought that up, horrified, to a professor who then said to him, well, what's the difference between that and the cow that this was before he was vegan. And the way he took it was to change himself. Gosh, what is the difference? I shouldn't be harming any of them.
Yeah. Now, if somebody is listening to this, and typically the people who listen to me are at least open to plant-based, open to vegetarian, vegan, even if they're not. Some people are playing the long game. They're thinking, one of these days she'll say something that will help me do this. But first of all, I guess you'll say, look at the book, Plant Powered Dog. Take a look at that. You've got an animal. Take a look at that. Maybe you can start there. What else would you say to kind of lean into a plant-powered way of living for our pets, for our dogs specifically?
I would say that even if you can start to add some dog-friendly, which of course we discuss in the book, whole plant foods to whatever you're feeding now, and see how your dog accepts it. Start slowly, see how they like it. Add some fresh foods. We've seen scientifically that even adding some fresh greens and cruciferous vegetables and things like that has positive anti-cancer benefits for dogs. So start there, start slowly. And the reason I think, reading the book is so important is because you will get a background about the evolution if you so desire, and then you will also understand the links between the animal ingredients and these chronic diseases in dogs and people. And then I would say the next step would be to really ask yourself, is the current system working for our dogs? Is it working?
Good point.
There might be people out there who say, well, no, what's not working is the kibble. Okay, I can understand and respect that, right? Of course, just like as people, we want to eat fresh food. And that's why my book is about a whole food plant-based diet, although I spend some time giving tips on purchasing commercial food, because not everyone wants to or can cook for their dog every day. And while kibble is definitely an issue, I would take it to the extent of, if you are going to feed kibble, please make it a complete and balanced plant-based kibble as opposed to an animal-based kibble, because at least it won't contain these rendered byproduct animal ingredients from slaughterhouses that were rejected for human consumption. The potential for the dead, dying, disease downed animals that can get into pet foods. So I would take it a step further, because these plant-based vegan pet foods are relatively new to the market. So while kibble is an issue, let's try to get the healthiest kibble we can, dry food, extruded food, if you will, and make it ones that aren't containing and riddled with these questionable animal ingredients.
So Diana, when people want to work with you and they're saying, I would like you to review what my dog is eating, or I would like to send you the report my vet sent us about the dog, our dog, and I'd like to work with you. Give me some. How do they find you? Do they call you? Do they come on your website? What do they do?
If someone's interested, they would go on my website, which is plantpowereddog.com, and there's a contact form there, and that would be the first outreach. And then, quite honestly, I go through a process where I discover if I'm not only right for you, but if you're right for me. And it is a commitment, when you want to do this for your dog. And for us to succeed, we need to partner, right? And that commitment has to be there. It's oftentimes, just like a doctor will tell you, people don't get sick in a day. So, the fix, we're not talking about a pharmaceutical, we're not talking about a quick fix. So, typically we'll hop on a little call and screen each other and see if we're right for each other.
I think this is what a in a way it seems just too glamorous, the idea that my pet has a nutritionist, but it feels very Palm Beach.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But on the other hand, it also just seems like we spend so much time and energy on our animal. It might be, I don't suppose you always have to work with them all week, every week. I assume that there are just things you can help them put into practice that are ongoing.
So I have a particular way of working with people that is more of I'm realizing that the support is really important, actually, and so it is how I work with people, because it's oftentimes, especially if you have an ill dog and you want someone to rely on that can help to guide you and can really be an important part of that whole, what I call sort of the nutritional part of that whole holistic approach. I think that's my forte. I guess maybe you could call it sort of that concierge level service. Yeah. And it might not be for everybody, but I want us all to have the best chance of your dog, really having a positive impact from it. And it takes buy-in from the person. It takes commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think I did not know you existed. I am so pleased to find out that you exist. I can't imagine that this is not the new thing, having a pet nutritionist, especially a plant-powered one. So I'm so pleased that you spent time with us and help my listeners understand that it's not just good for us to start crowding out some of these animal products and start including whole plants into our diets, and also reminding what you said earlier, don't do this to your dog or to yourself overnight. If your dog has been eating kibble or meat, you can't just put them all on cauliflower and broccoli this weekend.
No.
Yeah.
So and it has to be nutritionally sound. It has to be nutritionally sound. And that's why I say, if you don't want to jump into the type of commitment that a one-on-one relationship involves, please read the book, because it's the only book out there that tells you how to do it properly based on your dog's calories, their daily caloric intake, how to figure that out, how to understand how much of the different types of foods to put into a recipe. I'll often have I'll ask someone, how much does your dog eat in a day? And they'll say 2 cups of food. That has no meaning, right? Unless you're feeding a commercial food that has the caloric density of that cup. But in the world of home prepared fresh food, we have to start with our dog's calories. And we have to understand that in a plant-based diet, the majority of those calories needs to come from the high protein, the protein-rich foods, the legumes, right? We don't want to just feed them kale and sweet potatoes.
Right. Right. So it's not, so if you're listening to this, read the book, go on the website, Plant Powered Dog, do a little bit of homework. Even if you aren't ready to work with Diana Laverdure-Dunetz this week, do a little research, and maybe also the way she recommend, ask your vet. What is the research that you could point me to help me transition my dog's diet? Right. What is the science there? I think you gave us a lot of tips in terms of how to advocate for ourselves, for our pets, and how to just be open and know that there's actually a book here with 60 plus pages of scientific citations in it. It's not, there's a wealth of information there for us.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. It's Diana Laverdure-Dunetz, and the plantpowereddog.com.
Plantpowereddog.com. Yes.
Plant Powered Dog. Oh, no, okay. Plantpowereddog.com. Very good distinction. So in case you took me too literally. Thank you so much for being with us, Diana.
Thank you, Michelle. It was just amazing. Thank you.
So what did you think of Diana? Now, before I say anything else, remember, Diana did not say instantly stop feeding your dog all the animal products that you've been giving him or her, okay? Towards the end of the Plant-Powered Dog, and before the appendices and the pages and pages of scientific citations in the index, Diana offers some final thoughts for using the book, and right at the top there is go at your own pace. Every dog, every person will need to go at their own pace. There's no one correct speed with which to implement the action steps and the recipe formulas that Diana shares in the book. So keep moving forward, and you and your dog will reach your destination. And a couple of other final thoughts from that page, which I just love. Trust the science. Trust the science. Many people cling to outdated beliefs, even some of our medical professionals. Don't stress trying to change others who aren't ready. Just keep coming back to what research and evidence there is. Stay the course. There will be people who dislike or even feel threatened by your decisions. And Diana finishes that page up by quoting Maya Angelou, "Do the best you can until you know better. And then, when you know better, do better." Such good advice. Such good advice this week and every week for every single one of us on our separate journeys through life. So I hope you'll follow Diana Laverdure-Dunetz at plantpowereddog.com. And I'll see you next week. Until then, please, veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.